Ariyantaya Prana, Ariyantaya Mana, Ariyan Hayatreya, Ariyan Laya Mayra, Ariyan Maya Maya, Ariyan Shayayana, Ariyan Elyata, Ariyan Yahara, Ariyan Raya Ma'a, Ariyan Eyaki, Ariyan Leyara, Ariyan Sayashi, Ariyan Yalumra Elisa, Ariyan Yalumra Elisa, Ariyan Yalumra Elisa, Ariyan Kayachi, Ariyan Rayaki, Ariyan Yayari, Ariyan Sayaprana, Ariyan Tayamana, Ariyan Hayatreya, Ariyan Laya Mayra, Ariyan Maya Maya, Ariyan Shayayana, Ariyan Elyata, Ariyan Umyahara, Ariyan Brayama'a, Ariyan Eyaki, Ariyan Leyara, Ariyan Sayashi, Ariyan Yalumra Elisa, Ariyan Yalumra Elisa, Ariyan Yalumra Elisa, Ariyan Kayachi, Ariyan Ayaki, Ariyan Yayadri, Ariyan Sayaprana, Ariyan Tayamana, Ariyan Hayatreya, Ariyan Laya Mayra, Ariyan Maya Maya, Ariyan Shayayana, Ariyan Alyata, Ariyan Umyahara, Ariyan Brayama'a, Ariyan Eyaki, Ariyan Leyara, Ariyan Sayashi, Ariyan Yalumra Elisa, Ariyan Yalumra Elisa, Ariyan Yalumra Elisa, Ariyan Kayachi, Ariyan Rayaki, Ariyan Yayari, Ariyan Sayaprana, Ariyan Tayamana, Ariyan Hayatreya, Ariyan Laya Mayra, Ariyan Maya Maya, Ariyan Shayayana, Ariyan Elyata, Ariyan Umyahara, Ariyan Brayama'a, Ariyan Eyaki, Ariyan Leyara, Ariyan Sayashi, Ariyan Yalumra Elisa, 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 Ariyan Yalumra Elisa. Okay, welcome back to KS Reality Talks. We are here with Katie. And Katie, I didn't ask you how to pronounce your last name. Maybe you can do that.
Oshiwanita.
Oshiwanita. Okay. Welcome. Katie's got a lot to share with us. I just posted her book on there and my experiences with it and shared memories. So it's kind of prefacing the interview for that in a way. But maybe wherever you want to start, I do have the list of questions and things, but I also like to allow Spirit to kind of direct and go with the flow with this. So maybe you want to introduce yourself and kind of start.
Okay. maybe it's better if I'm getting nervous. So
Sure, no,
you
it's
just
no
start
problem.
with your questions,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then I'll get the flow going and the
yeah,
wave going, so to
yeah. To
speak.
start off, usually it's like where you found KS, like how you were introduced to it, and what you were doing right before KS.
That's a pretty good introduction right there.
Mm.
Uh, I had discovered KS in, let's see, it was 1998, 99. No, I picked that back. Hold on. I sang it that long ago. Well, yeah, and I guess it was the year 2000. Okay, it was close to the 2000 mark. I think I'd started hearing a little bit about it, but I think I didn't really. I was going to this health food store, and the owner and I would, it was a mom and pop type shop, and we would just sit and talk about all kinds of crazy stuff, and we're definitely a feeling of family, that we kind of knew each other. And other people would come into the shop, and there was this other gentleman that came in, and he would talk about EH, or he was at the time, it wasn't EH, or yeah, no,
Ashiana.
yeah, it was Ashiana. Or Louise. No, that's not Louise Hayes. That's a different name. But anyway,
Ash.
and he Ash, Ash, and he would talk about how we'd talk about aliens and the changes in 2000 and different things, and knew that there were stellar activation cycles, and knew there was something going to be happening, and da 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 da. And he would say, "Oh, Ashiana Dean gets into this." Well, the friend and I, the friend's name's Lon, we would be like, "Oh yeah, whatever." David, the guy's other name is David. "Oh yeah, whatever." That's good, David. And then finally, he's like, "No, really, you've got to listen to her stuff." And he had like a bunch of her material, and first he gave me a cassette tape of an interview. It was called Light in the Dark, or something like that was the name of the interview. And it was Ash talking about the Voyagers book. It was like one of the first few interviews she had done, and I don't remember who it was
This
she was
was
doing
like
it for.
way back, huh?
Oh,
Like
it
in
was
the
old.
90s or something. Okay.
Yeah. And I remember her in the discussion. She had this group was like kind of alien enthusiasts and more kind of spiritual, new agey type people. Usually, kind of one end to the other of the spectrum, but they were merging, harmonizing very nicely in this group. So she was able to then talk about the Voyagers book in a really positive way, and all the things she said was like, I kind of knew that. I knew I wasn't from here, kind of feeling.
Right.
And so then he gave me the Voyagers book, but it was volume 1. And so I read through that, and I remember when I was reading that, I was like, okay, this is true, but I kept feeling in the back of my mind, but there's more. There's way more that's not being said, that's not that great. And then volume 2 came out, and so I got my hands on that. And I read that, and I was like, oh, okay, this feels right. But I kept feeling like there's actually still even more than that. But this is a pretty good synopsis. I had this feeling of.
Right.
And around that time, I was working for the state of Illinois, and I had gotten laid off. And this was September of, it has to be 2002 by this point. Yeah.
So you first saw
Because
Voyagers
2007, yeah, I had,
98, 99?
No, it was 2000.
Okay,
I
that's
think
right when all this
2000.
happened.
It was. I was getting bits and pieces, but I hadn't really made the commitment yet. And I would hear, this is going on with this group and that group, and my friend Lon kind of came to me and he goes, don't let that discussion get to you about all that. And I said, you know what? I sort of intuitively picked up on when she speaks, she's speaking for the quote-unquote public in general, when she talks about this event and this activation and this da-da-da happening, it's kind of her template is able to kind of generally pick up on the overall mass consciousness of the planet.
Right.
Not specifically to each individual on the planet, but kind of the mass consciousness. Okay? And I got that really strongly back then. And I was like, oh, so just because she's saying this and that and the other's going on planetarily did not necessarily mean that was what's going to happen to me. Which I would then extrapolate. All of us in the group, it's the same story. In general, there's certain things as a collective consciousness we create. Which I guess kind of goes to later discussion of how you create your own reality, but it's a later part. So that helped me with not getting too caught up with stuff, because there's a little kind of a drama aspect to this material, which is actually not the authentic part of the material to me. So, because it's really the science of vibrational mechanics. So that's really the focus. So around that time when I was kind of going back and forth with it, and my friend Lon had gone to, I think it was in Pennsylvania, and it was the workshop that had the shadow material in it. It was like dance for...
Yeah, flame body, shadow body.
Yeah, it had all that material in it. He had gotten that book, the whole thing of all those techniques. That's what I cut my teeth on in learning Echologic science, was that material.
Cut your teeth on? What do you mean?
Yeah. You know, the baby cuts its teeth.
Okay. So that was
cut
the
my
early,
teeth.
the first process.
Early,
Okay.
yes.
This was 2000? You did flame body?
This was 2002.
Okay. Wow.
It was October. Okay, because right around that time, because I think had like a couple months or so, whatever, that workshop was in that time period in the beginning of 2000, or not beginning, but somewhere a few months before this. And he kept saying to me, "You really need to just." He made a copy of it for me, bad boy, and he gave me a copy of it, and I'm like, okay, but I'm not the kind of person that can really do a lot of technical stuff easily because I can get a little overwhelmed. I have dyslexia, so written material can be a little stressful, especially complicated, and I was working for the state at the time doing a lot of technical work as well. So my inner being, me, said, oh, okay, let's orchestrate a little bit here. I got laid off. And what was funny is, and it was horrible, don't get me wrong, I'm saying funny, but it was horrible at the same time. I was really stressed because they like herded us into this room, and then they started going down. We because it was a union situation, you had seniority, so the higher people got the more choice picks, and it worked its way down, and then it got to me, and the one that they offered me was like in a place I wasn't going to go to. So I said, no, thank you. And so I ended up getting laid off, which at the time I was stressed about it, and I went home and I kneeled down on the floor and I rested my head onto the floor, and I just relaxed and I just breathed, and I said, okay, guys, because by that point I was kind of knowing that I was part of something bigger, that I knew that there was a collective consciousness of me. So I was like, okay. But I was still, to a certain extent, looking at outside of myself quite a bit, of receiving information that I still was thinking it was outside of me and not me, but I still knew I was part of something. You know, I was like get kind of caught up in the children of law of one thinking. So I'm, forehead on the floor, breathing, connecting in, going, okay, what in the world is going on here? What do you want me to do? I'm totally open. I know that there's something going on here bigger than me. I just had that feeling. And I got relaxed. It's okay. It wasn't a voice. It was just a knowingness, an awareness of, it's all good. You really need this time to study the material, and you'll have, think of it as like a hiatus. A hiatus? No. What was the thing when you're sabbatical? you're going to get your unemployment, and you'll have time to study the material, and you will be getting a job with the state that you'll like even better by around a certain time frame they gave me. But I got laid off in September. I think it was like January I got employment again. So I had a pretty good period of time to just focus on the material. So I did that.
All 20 techniques, flame body, everything.
I did all of it, yeah. And
What happened?
And this is funny because when I was doing it, in the middle of doing it, I was like, I was like, I'm not really, I don't know that it's really doing anything for me. But like a few months later, or a few months into it or so, what I did notice, I started looking around my hologram, which is my reality, and I noticed how I connected with others had shifted, and it was much more peaceful and loving and easy, and things just flowed better than they were before, and I just felt really a lot better, and it just felt more aware in general. So I couldn't say initially when I was doing the techniques that I could really tell anything initially. I mean, I could feel some things, but I didn't really feel like there was a huge shift.
It was more out-pictured.
It was more out-pictured, yes. And I was like, oh, so I guess there is something to this, because it really did make a shift in my hologram. So
it makes sense, because you're working with these other bodies. It's not the 3D body directly.
Exactly.
It's a DNA template. That makes perfect sense.
Exactly. So then, okay, so so that was my intro into it.
Right. Foundation
and foundation. And then I would say, no, wait, listen.
The Maharic Seal. Like, when did you first do that?
Well, that was when I got the book, because that was part of the techniques. Was right off the bat was not, well, Voyagers too. I did it there, but when I got that flame body stuff, that was one of the first things you had to do. Mm-hmm. I mean, it had everything in the beginning of what we needed to get done for that time period. Everything. Right, so I just went through it and did it. And
did you feel the Maharic Seal when you did the connection, the planetary bio interface thing, all that?
Yeah. I did.
Picturing.
But it was more. I think it was more long term of really feeling significance of it was the out picturing. Mm-hmm. And I think because of the fact that I was connecting into the Earth's grids better in a healthy way and running the Maharic frequencies, that was more of why I had a better out picturing, because I was running higher frequencies in my daily holographic life.
Okay. Was there any? Sorry.
Oh.
Just cooking grilled cheese or something.
Okay.
Our alarm is like right in the kitchen there. It's kind of a bad place for it.
Okay.
Was there any predominant teaching that you were following before KS that you resonated with the most? I
kind of was just sort of a typical New Agey person. I would kind of play with some Carlos Castaneda, a little bit of Christian stuff.
Were you raised
general meditation?
Christian,
my family's Christian. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah. And so I'm trying to think what else. Just kind of would do meditation and try different things out. And there was this one group that I went to in St. Louis, that because I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, that Spiraling Stairways and Finer Forces, and that everybody's gonna get traumatized when they hear this. Wow. It was a group that got into channeling. Okay. But I never actually channeled myself there. I just enjoy listening to others when they would do it. And it seemed like, I don't know what it is about channelers and smoking, but that seems to be, big channelers and smoking seems to be a common thing to do together.
There is something with that, yeah. Maybe it's
really is
the way to relax after you're done channeling, because it seems like it can take a lot out of it.
I know the reason Aisha gave was that when you, the Zetas, I think is what she said.
Yeah.
The Zeta group, it pollutes your body, and they don't like going into your body with the smoke energy in it. So, and actually,
Yeah.
I would say there's
It's like
probably
a
other entities
smoke
that
screen.
puts up. It's literally a smoke screen.
Yeah.
It's a way of protecting.
Yeah.
If you're not someone that's been running the Mohawk Shield or anything like that, and that's considering that's only been around since the 2000, channeling's been going on a lot longer than that. Yeah. So yeah, there was that, and so
So you
I was
were
kind
into
of
the channeling groups, like
I just enjoyed. I've always enjoyed being part of anybody that's looking beyond their nose, so to speak. Able to see beyond, able to be intuitive and see things. And explore things. I've always been attracted to that.
were you always fascinated like with UFOs when you were little, or the mysteries, the unknowns, the
Yes.
pyramids, and all?
Yes.
Okay.
And actually, speaking on that, I'm trying to remember. I think it was before I got into KS. I think, yeah. There was, because there was two. Well, one time for sure. I'm thinking maybe a second time, but I'll say for sure one time. I was probably, gosh, 6 or 7 maybe. Living in St. Louis, city of St. Louis, Central West End, and for some reason, and we were all sitting watching TV, and for some reason, I don't know why, I stood up, walked to the window, moved the shade, and looked out and up, and I saw a saucer, a spaceship,
3D.
and
Just right there. 3D.
and I looked up, and I was mesmerized looking at it.
How close?
And
Was it just right?
it was still high up in the sky, but it was where I could see what the shape it was.
Okay.
And maybe I'll try to draw it for you. I
Yeah.
tried drawing it for people, but I'll maybe try to draw it.
Saucer.
No, I never seen any. Oh, it kind of reminded me and this was before that movie came out, or at least before I saw the movie. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Remember the ship that came in and it had all the colored lights around it?
Yeah.
I'm trying to
Then the
think.
little dome. I think it had a little dome at the top, metal dome at the top, and then the rest of it around it was all colored lights.
That intricate. Like it was, you could see the little lights, everything, little compartments.
And it wasn't making any sound. It was just floating along, or flying along up above, past from one side of one window of the house around to the other side of the room. Because I ran over to the other window once I could move and looked at it as fast because I was just mesmerized.
Mm-hmm.
And then I looked through the shade because it came the other side. And then finally, when I was like, could talk again, I was just mesmerized, little kid.
Right.
I turned and said, okay. And so, in my parents' family's defense, I was 6 or 7 or something like that years old. I don't remember exactly. That's pretty small. I ran up to my parents and I go, I just saw a spaceship! And they were watching whatever program they were watching. And they were like, it's kind of, because I was a really little kid, they looked at me like, oh, that's nice, dear.
Right.
Totally discounting me. I'm like, no, really. By the time I was able to talk and tell them that the spaceship had long gone past it and went on its way.
Yeah.
And nobody would, I'm just a little kid. Just making something up. Like little kids do. I was seeing things little kids see. So yeah, that was pretty cool. I asked a few years later somebody that was kind of on the psychic side, and I tried to get out of them what they knew, and I never really got a satisfactory answer. Because to me it was like, why would I mean, I know I'm intuitive to a certain extent, but still, why was I so drawn to look out,
Right.
I'm sure how many times, I have a feeling that, I'm sure that wasn't the first time that something passed over. I'm sure it happens all the time and people just blow it off, you know.
Mhm.
But yeah, I have a sense
Look,
it's probably some kind of family.
looking back at it now, what do you feel? Do you feel that it might have been a family thing? Feel anything
That's
negative,
why
positive?
I never got negative.
Hmm.
Kind of neutral feeling.
Okay,
I never got cold about it or just, but I just, something I just was good for me to see at that time.
just kind of
Maybe,
expanded your
yes,
peripheral a little. Yeah.
right. So that when people talked about it, I know for good and well it's true.
Right.
So I don't have to have that issue. Well, wouldn't it be really nice if the aliens are really true? I know
Yeah.
aliens are true.
Right. Right.
I
Well,
saw
that's
one.
it's
I
just
saw
what
him.
me and Paul were talking about last night. Like the Guardian thing is they don't do show a presence that much. If they do, it's for a very
Huh.
good reason. Like there's a special thing with that, you know. So it could have very well been something like a preface for before your journey. Like, look, here's what you're going to need to know to expand these compartments and things in your brain,
Exactly.
you know, to be
And
ready.
actually, when I tell you something a little bit, much I'm now I'm going to wait a little bit before I tell you something
Okay,
else in regards to that.
that's fine.
Um, so let's see. Well, maybe it is. Maybe it's
Oh, go
close.
ahead.
Yeah, it's
Go ahead.
probably getting it
Yeah.
because I ended up in my journey. Oh, okay. One more thing I want to say before I jump into that discussion. Not that I guess it matters, but like it kind of does because, and this will probably hit some people that are long term chaosers. Is um, in let's see, it was June. Hold on, June 2000. Trying to think. It's 2002. I'm spacing on okay, wait, no, that would no, that's right. Okay. I had been in a committed relationship for a number of years. And we finally, in kind of that time period, 2000, I think it was 2000, June of 2000, and no. Oh, this is embarrassing. Um, I, no, I think it was, okay. Anyway, so I think 2000 I had gotten married, and then we had gotten a house in 2001, um, the following year. But in that time period, I think it must have been 2000, yeah, it had to have been September, October, or something like that, or November, whatever, something like that of 2000. It was whenever it
After
was.
Voyagers, after you.
Oh, we have, yeah.
Okay.
This was when we had the edict. When was the edict of war? That was
Hmm.
October of 2001, right?
Right. It seems like it was early on, 2001.
And during that time period, those few months afterwards, one of the that's when I became really started to become activated.
Okay.
Before that, it was sort of like we don't really need your coding quite yet because we're looking to hopefully have things go this way. So we're getting you into the program for your own development and maybe the potentiality of having the need for your codes.
And
Um,
describe what activated is like in 3D terms.
I'm getting there.
Okay. All right. All right. It's a big
so
preface here. Yeah.
so during that time period, okay, when that occurred, one of the things that the Guardians were involved with doing on a mass level, and all the individuals that had the codes for it, was having people having people connect with their twins, right? I think it was around that time they had a thing where one of their missions was to have people to connect with their
Birthing contracts, Palladorian thing. Is that it?
connecting with their twins,
The twins. Okay, it's different.
twin thing.
Okay.
I think they called it twins. I don't know if
Even
they called
back
it.
then, even in Voyagers.
Yeah, this was not this. Well, no, this is when we're talking the War Edict. So we're talking 2001,
Okay.
towards the end of 2001 into the beginning of 2002. Um, and I think the volume 2 came out 2001
Okay.
because it had the September 11th material added
Right.
into
Yeah.
into it. So I got activated in terms of, okay, the war edict occurred, so things weren't going to be going smoothly like they were hoping. So they were like, okay, how can we counter on a mass level, right? Because that's what they deal with, mass levels, not individuals, but mass level.
Bridge Zone Project was
Consciousness.
still on.
The what?
Bridge Zone
The bridge,
Project
yeah.
was still
I
on.
think that,
Terra
yeah,
hadn't fallen.
yeah, right, yeah. This was just, yeah, yeah. Because I think the bridge zone started from the get-go in Voyagers. So yeah, no, that was still, yeah, that was still going on. And yeah, I don't think that had. I think this was probably an attempt to keep that going.
Mm-hmm.
It was, for some reason, I don't remember any more of the details of it, but I'm sure there's an old chaser out there that knows that. As to what was going on with that, with connecting with your twin.
Okay.
And when two twins connect, they two become three. So you just raise the quantum quite a bit when you can actually get two twins flames activated together.
Okay. Because, I mean, that sounds like Sliders 11 to me.
That was a different level. This was more on a lower level.
External.
I don't know what it was. I can't remember if it was like soul level or probably over soul. It was light body. It's still dealing with light body structure. Right. It wasn't going higher than light body structure. Right. So I began. My contract was to connect with, or that was the intention, I think, at that time, was to connect with my twin. Well, the person I was with was not my twin. And I had always known, as much as I cared about him, that I wasn't going to be with him forever, because I knew that there was somebody else that was actually my twin. And there's a lot of crazy history stuff with that. But anyway, so things started going awry with the relationship. And oh, you're right, because I had that going on before. That would be right. So then, yeah. So that caused, I think, yeah, because then it's September of 2002 that I actually got laid off, and that's when So in that, from the end of 2001 to basically a year time period in there. Before that, I was like, la-di-da-di-da, let's do the money making and living normal and da-da-da-da-da-da-da, like da-da-da. Let's play around a little bit with the metaphysical stuff, but really we're just living a normal la-di-da life. When October of 2001 hit with the war edict, that changed. Okay. I started getting this feeling of dying. Like, I couldn't live that way anymore. It wasn't right for me. I needed to, so I started exploring. That's when I really got into KS. I really started exploring, and that's when I kind of was feeling things out, and I was putting some more attention on the, and there was like another group that I was involved with, besides, spiraling I'd always kind of played with.
Spiraling Staircases, you said?
Spiraling Stairways and Finer Forces. They actually brought two groups together.
They're still
because I think there was. I don't know. That was like years ago. That was like the early 80s that I was involved with that. When I went off to college, I was away, so things changed. But I became more 3D-ish, tried to be more practical and normal for a period of time. But there was another group too. It was an Indian type, or American Indian, West Coast, kind of Oregon area. I wish I could remember the name of it. But anyway, there was just little things like that I just kind of played with different things, just sort of feeling out what felt right, and wasn't really finding. I can't even remember them anymore, because I kind of experienced it, but it wasn't resonating, and I just kind of was like, let it go, because I knew, just there's something was off about it. Right. I could always feel something off. until I touched the KS.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I was like, oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
This is it.
Okay.
Even
That's
with
good.
all the crazy dramas,
Mhm.
I knew that the technology was correct. I had enough cellular memory to know, yes, this is correct. Some of the politics I kind of got,
Histories.
the histories, and well, the history, I've learned a lot more about how time works.
Right.
And that there is no rock bottom solid past.
Hmm.
That changes very easily. Past, present, and future is very malleable, very plastic, very,
But
very,
simultaneous, right?
and
Still,
very
still
simultaneous. It's very
simultaneous.
now, now, now,
Yeah.
now, now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, so I ended up, okay, so the change in the relationship, I ended up moving. I got up I was living in, oh lordy. Anyway, I was living still in Illinois, just in a college town. Why am I spacing on the name anyway, it'll come to me at some
Oh, it's
point.
fine.
Anyway, I was renting a cute little house, and it was at the end of a cul-de-sac, and then it backed into these woods.
Just by yourself, you said.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And what was funny with that is at that time I was connecting into my inner being, but I was still kind of seeing it as still outside of me, as this force or power outside of me.
Okay.
Still,
Were you
um,
identifying it with the personality outside of yourself also?
and not really. I never saw an identity. I knew it was a collective.
Okay.
Because actually, what's interesting I forgot about that. When I first was reading the Voyagers book, I got a little psychic
Okay.
visitation, where it was like this. I think I was laying down, and I could sense this like cloud-like formation of consciousness
Hmm.
come into the room. And I just sort of sensed they were very respectful, didn't invade my space, just sort of gently came in and sort of sat there and said, "Here we are."
Hmm.
And they didn't really say anything else other than that. And they just sat and waited. And they waited for me to connect and know that they were there. And then it was almost just like checking me out to see where I was at feeling and letting me check them out
When you
feeling.
say cloud thing, did you have anything that you remember about your third eye? Any spiraling colors from your forehead? Any pink, different colors?
I
Or
I was always I've always been kind of, no, I didn't do that. And I think it's because there is some blockages that I do have, and I
okay.
do have a little bit of a disconnection between my throat chakra is blocked.
Hmm.
So I have trouble. I can see things, but and have a lot of insights, but sometimes coming through my mouth,
Yeah. Right.
there's sometimes a little bit lost in translation,
Yeah.
and sometimes I can get a little too intellectual and not pay attention enough with my belly energy.
Yeah.
Being down in an intuitive belly. Um, so it was just more. Okay, yeah. One of the things that, yeah, when I did actually start getting, okay, yeah, all right, yeah. But this was actually before that. I don't know. I just sort of had like just sort of this insight, just sort of a visual in my mind of this, and knew it was there, this sort of cloud formation kind of thing, and sort of gaseous, cloudish
Hmm.
feeling that that's what it was. And it just kind of came in, like I say, and I just kind of knew it was there, and it was, and I was like, oh, and I was like, yay, hi, and then it, respectfully went out because that's what they're supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
That's part of the process is they introduce themselves, they don't invade, they
Yeah.
just kind of, and then they go about for a while, and then they come back, a little bit later.
Yeah.
So I had that, and I don't know why now I just forgot what was I talking about before that? Do you remember?
About the expansion that was starting to happen of like your horizons is what it sounded like. Like you needed more. You were in the establishment and you needed to
Oh,
go beyond.
I was
It wasn't
still,
enough. Or,
thinking more, even though I knew it was part of me. when I was connecting, because I was doing enough of the work to know I had gone through the flame body activations and I knew I was activating parts of myself, there was still this feeling of it being still something separate, even though I knew it was still me. Um, and so I could ask, I would be driving back and forth to work. I was still, I was still with my ex. We ended up separating. Anyway, I hadn't moved to my house yet. I was exploring. And I was like, okay, guys, because I was trying to say, okay, guys. I still say, okay, guys. Yeah. My clan. I was like, can you show me where you want me to go? And I got a visual on the house. And when I went to see, and I also had gotten a visual on the car I ended up getting too, because I worked for the type of job I needed to have better transportation than I had because I was transporting kids around. And I saw that too. They gave me a visual on both of those, and then things fell into place easily for me to be able to get it. And I remember when I first looked at the house, I was sitting on the front porch, for some reason we had got the owner that was showing the house, we had miscommunication, and when I went to see the place, he couldn't come because he thought it was a different time or something. Anyway, so I had a chance to just sort of sit there and just be in the space of the property. And I remember sitting on the front porch and sort of having a feeling, the front porch feels right. I looked out forward and I could see the trees like stuff that I had seen in my vision. I was like, oh, the house was a different color than my vision, but I noticed the house was recently painted. So I think it was painted over. Right. And I just kind of knew, okay, yeah, this is it. And so then things worked out for that. And one thing I wanted to share significantly, which goes back to the alien influence, is, okay, I lived butting up against this big, beautiful forest and field and stuff. It was just really nice. And Edwardsville. I was living in Edwardsville. Okay. Edwardsville, Illinois. Damn. College town. Right. And there was, I could easily, the woods, I could easily get into the property, even though it wasn't where I was. Never did get permission. I'd slip in and walk through the woods and and there was this. And eventually, though, what ended up happening in that area, and I always kind of had this feeling of just sort of feeling really connected there. And it was funny because in actuality, I always poo-pooed while I was living there on those grids because I just thought, this is just rural, Illinois and St. Louis, and they don't know nothing, and they're sleeping, and they're not really conscious. And I find out later, though, that St. Louis and Cahokia Mounds and all of that was a huge, major civilization there. All that area where I lived there and everything was a huge, major civilization, a mound civilization, or a Moorish civilization.
But there
so
wasn't was there like a spiritual community there still?
No, well, not that I ever found.
Okay.
It was just the ancestors, quote unquote, ancestors were there. And what was weird is one day I was I'll get to the point pretty soon because it's sort of a setup of something. One time I was walking through the woods and I slipped and fell, and I'm laying on my back and looking up, and the birds kind of fluttered a certain way, and I sort of had this feeling of, oh shit, there's going to be a change right here, like major something's going to happen. I noticed. I came home from work one day and all the woods that were there were gone, basically. And I was like, oh, crap. And I found out that they were going to be putting in I think it was some kind of one of those radio towers where it has all the crap they put on it. Okay. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Or like a cell tower type
Cell
thing?
tower
Or,
type
yeah.
thing.
Okay.
Well, they only really put cell towers in hotspots, energetic hotspots.
Yeah.
So, and what was
Voices.
funny is pretty much, I could look out my window and pretty much that whole area was flattened except for one really huge tree. And I was like, oh. And I kind of tuned into that tree and I was like, yeah, I'm an old one. I'm a keep. One thing I've learned throughout the years is about nature is the trees or certain plants tend to be grid keepers.
Hmm.
They have ancient ones embodying them. For
Okay.
whatever reason, they choose to embody the plant life. It was really powerful when I was in the time I was in New Mexico. Um, but this is we're still in Illinois. Um, so so there's this tree, and so I was kind of pulled to connect with it, and they ended up building their tower really close to that tree, and they have a little building and stuff. I mean, the tree was kind of like part of that energy that they built around. So I would go to that tree, and there'd be times where I'd walk up to that tree and my legs would get bitten, like electricity. This is before they didn't have the thing up yet. It took them a while to actually get the thing built, but um, so it wasn't from that. I would walk up and sit around the tree, and I could feel like being bitten, like something was biting me, except it wasn't bugs. It was like energy getting ouch,
Zapped.
zapped. And so I had one time I was sitting there and I was getting, following the chaos material pretty good. And, but I'm trying to think, had I gone to, my first workshop was I moved in July 2003? No, 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 no. I had to have gone to a workshop before that, before I moved. Let me think. Well, hold on.
They weren't on sliders at that point.
Oh,
That
no,
was
no.
later. Yeah.
Um, hold on. Had to have been, was it 2003? Maybe it was 2003. Yeah, okay, yeah. Because May of 2003 was that when okay. Yeah. It was September of 2003 in Arizona. Um, and that's when I got my third ordination, because the first two I had gotten in Tennessee with Peggy alone. I don't know if you ever talked to Peggy. She's an older one
Sounds
that was
familiar.
part of the split and was one of the ones I think that got out of things when the
It
split
sounds
occurred.
like around Templars. Were they doing the Templar series around that time? Or was that after or before?
Templars was around that time, because I remember when I first went to the workshop, they were still saying, hey, you would really want to purchase this. But I remember that before, like a month before it, they had the Seattle, Washington workshop for newbies, and that was the one that was supposed to be where they invited the other groups that were poo-pooing on KS.
Right. Open table discussion thing.
Yeah, which they never came to that
Yeah.
for whatever reason.
Just
And
initially.
anyway, I had asked sort of intuitively, I was like, okay, which workshop should I go to? And when I tuned into the Seattle, Washington one, it was like, oh, that would be really nicey nice. It would be good. But if you went to the August one, not the August one, the September one, no, October, the Arizona one, the Phoenix, Arizona one,
Yeah.
I got this swirling woo energy, like, wow, there'd be a lot of shifts. And that was true. It was a pretty powerful workshop. And I had gotten my third ordination there. Or was
What
it fourth ordination?
do you remember what it was
No, I think it
about?
was fourth ordination. I think it was at the fourth ordination.
Those were the upgrades you only get at the workshops, right? The fourth. Ones.
It had to have been the fourth, because I think I had gotten, yeah, because I had gotten 1 and 2, in Tennessee, as I was involved with that group, and I was involved with hanging out with them during May of that year during what was going on with the fall of the Sierra Minte and all that went on in 2003, and with you remember all of that. That was 2000, yeah, because 2005 was something else. So 2003, when the Sierra Minte thing did that thing where they had to create another one on top of it or some weird shit thing like that. Anyway, it was they were in
Crystal River Dance. Was that when they were first anchoring the Crystal River?
I think it was before that. Okay. It was before the Crystal River. We're talking 2003. Okay. So when they went on the boat. Was it on a boat? Were they on a boat? No, I think they weren't on a boat. They were. Oh shoot! It was. I'll remember it at some point. I'm just not remembering it now. But I know the old timers will know what I'm talking about. In 2003, May of 2000, that time period, because that was the Hethalon thing for 2003 when all that crazy shit happened.
But to get an upgrade or to get your level 4 at a workshop, I've also heard that they don't always have them at every single workshop. You're not.
No, this was a special. This was special because I had workshops. Yeah, this. I'm so glad I went to that workshop because I don't know that. And it was my first one. But like I said, I was involved with Peggy Loam in Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee, with that group. That was a strong group at that time. And I went a number of different times there, but I specifically went when they did that, and there was another activation thing in January, I think the following year, that they were involved with the pillar thing coming in. Anyway, so then I think when I went to that workshop, I had only gotten 1 and 2, but Peggy and Pammy grabbed me and said, "We need to give you 3 because tomorrow you're going to get 4." So I got 3, and the next day I got 4, and that was like, whoa! It was just intense. And it was funny is after that workshop, my right foot, the sole of my right foot, I noticed on the plane back, it just had this really sore spot in the bottom, and ever since then, it's just like this one spot, just always kind of gets energy stuck there, and I think it's something was going on with those activations, and it just hit me and blasted my poor little sole of my right foot. But yeah, it was intense. It was good. It was fun. So I was very much knew that I enjoyed thoroughly doing grid work. I had picked that up, that I could do that, and always felt more towards the grid work than I was actually towards the Kathara healing, individual healing, although I did go through that. I did get certified, not doing the first group that they had, the Kathara Alliance. It was the Kathara Alliance, and what was the other one? I wasn't the one that got in trouble. I was the original group, part of the original group, which I think was the Kathara Alliance.
Wasn't the Kathara team? It was the
Kathara team. I was the Kathara Alliance.
Okay,
yeah, the original part of the original guys that came in. And so I was progressing and doing whatever I could get my hands on and stuff. And okay, so I'm at this. So I'm starting to connect, do some grid work here and there, and I was going to this tree, hanging at this tree a little bit here and there. And one of the times that I was there, again with my inner vision, I guess I want to say with that, with the inner vision stuff, I also had help. I told you about my friend Lon, who got into this material. We both got into it at the same time. So he worked at it in his own personal way, and of course I did mine. And
is this Lonnie in the group? The same Lonnie or different?
Lon, not Lonnie. It's a guy.
Okay.
And I would get like, okay, Lon, we need to meet at Cahokia Mountains. the guardians, or I could just feel ancestors that it was time. So we would go and we would have our codes and lay them. We'd just get drawn to a particular spot and we'd work. And what Lon was really good at, his inner vision was excellent. He could really see things clearly. I was still pretty muffled, and it was kind of hit and miss a lot of the time. Still, I don't think quite to where he was, but when we would be working, I would find by being in his fields that I could see things a bit more clearly. And also with that, because he could see, I would be like, okay, I'm seeing da 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 da. And he'd go, yes, I see that too. So I get confirmation. And so then I would go back and go, okay, well then what was I doing to see that? And so I just became more familiar with tuning in and looking at, I close my eyes. It's easiest for me when I close my eyes than to physically try to look, although I can open my eyes and still see things, but it can be a little stronger when I have my eyes closed. And just focus on on almost like a screen on my forehead, but on the inside. And I just relax with soft eyes, and I can then through, which is where the third eye is, out, yeah. I can see things going on around me, in front of me. But from that perspective.
Like energy movement, cloud type things?
No, I can see it. I can really see. Like, for instance, the time... well, okay, I'll tie this back to why I'm trying to go back to where I was living at. So, for instance, one time was... I'm hanging out at the tree, and I'm got, kind of, but this time I did have my eyes open on that one, but I was still tuning into that space, and it was still kind of around that same time working with Lon. And I had come up to me what looked like a Draconian type character, but he was in a uniform, and he was very respectful and kind, and like really happy to see me, and like was like saying, like, I'm kind of here to like make sure you're okay in this space, because it was like this sense that it was like it was a portal here, and all kinds of things were going in and out. Okay. And he was kind of like, and it was funny the way and I think back on it now, he was actually in a really nice way kind of getting me up and walking me away from the spot. Okay. But he was real nice and sweet and respectful. And his domineer and everything was like not aggressive, but yet you could tell he could defend himself if he wanted, when he needed to. And
so actual beings, you have your inner sight on to see
my inner,
yeah,
I can see actual
in this world.
Right.
Okay,
right.
Gotcha.
And kind of going back to Cahokia Mounds, because Lon would do work himself there, and he worked with the Mahadrana and a few other codes we induced in those grids and some others. And there was... I can't remember anymore what it was, but there was something. Those are powerful grids there. They go down south towards southern Illinois. Yeah, well, they're not common gates that Iesha would talk about, but we knew that they were still some type of other system that connected into
like
those.
Sedona, like where vortices are and stuff. Like that or something, or chakras.
Something like that. It's part of another network that's the ley lines and things that tie into those ley lines, and it's just sort of an ancient old network system. Sure. Yeah. And when there would be certain activations that were occurring in the grids, I would at some point get, okay, this needs to be, you need to spend some time here to help open this so that the energy can flow to activate something else that goes with it. Yeah. But it was very private, and it wasn't part of the mainstream KS group stuff at all. Yeah.
And there's a few people that do that just take it upon themselves to follow spirit to where they're guided to. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And one of those times that I had called Lon up and said, okay, this is it, we gotta go. He's like, okay. And we were there. One of the times we were walking a certain spot, and I could see this community, and like at one point we were sitting, and he was like, oh my God, it's like his forehead was just opening up, and he just like aliens faces were flashing in his face.
Yeah, and it was just, whoa, it was intense, because it was like a lot of beings were there. And we were walking around. I was like, I go over there. It looks like there's this community and like a dome energy over it. And oh, which God, it just triggered something else for me. Anyway, a dome thing over it, and they're kind of like shut in this space and or protected, or anyway, there would be different situations. But I could see these people, but they didn't like necessarily come up, but I could just see them. And he'd be like, yeah, I see them too. And we would do certain things, and it would do something for them. I remember, like if they were like, some of them were like shut in time, stuck in time, or stuck in that spot.
Okay.
We could open it up where they could get
Hibernation
out.
zone stuff almost.
Something like that. But this was before I even knew about hibernation zone.
Right,
I knew something was there, and I just follow what I would intuitively awareness that I would get. I never had a person voice outside of me feeling coming in and talking. I would never, and I always would say, because I had done the flame body work and connected and knew how dimensionality worked, I consciously tuned in and made sure I connected to that line of me.
Inner voice,
right, inner witness, inner guidance, inner sight. And I would always be really good at feeling in my belly, and actually, this is a little bit off track, because this I learned this deeply as I was one of the ones that went to Morocco, the 2000 go to the Demon Fest.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I learned so much there.
Sounds like everyone did.
One of the things that I had learned there is I always, as a kid, I would have trouble with my stomach. I'd be in the car, sit in the back seat, or some other times I'd get sick really easily. And what I found out was that whenever I'm getting any disharmonic energies, it hits me in the stomach. Everybody has some part of their body, if they listen to their body, that tells them when something energetically is not in alignment. Somewhere they have it. Headaches, stomach, neck, whatever. There's some part of their body that's usually a little weaker, because it's those weaker spots are the ones that are going to get hit. Or
a few.
Yeah, exactly. My stomach's probably the biggest, but I usually, the back of my neck gets really tight too. If I get a lot of frequencies coming in, they may or may not be negative. They're just a lot of frequencies coming in. It hits me in the back of the neck. But usually if it's very disharmonic energies, but I guess I've kind of learned it could be just intense high energies, but usually it's disharmonic. Let me tell you, my stomach was killing me during that workshop. And I had learned at some point, I don't remember anymore exactly how, but there was this, shoot, I wish I could remember it now. I haven't said it in so long, but it was this particular sequence of wording. I can't remember, but there was particular. No, it was what we were doing in the KS group at the time. Okay. I'll maybe remember at some point, just like I remembered Edwardsville. But
was it a song? Oh, Mate Pate.
No, it was Lordy. It was I'll remember it at some point. But it was something that we were saying, and then there was something we could say after that to make it run longer. I'll remember. It was kind of part of that, but it was.
It'll come to you later.
It'll come to me. Anyway, we would say that sequence, and then I would say, like, there was something I would say to make it lock in, and then it would run. And usually if I had 2 or 3 other people with me doing it too, it would then clear the space. Whatever we found out later, I didn't know that's what was going on at the time. I just knew my belly hurt, and I was doing so to get my belly to not hurt. Mm-hmm. But later we found that there was these dark pillars that were anchoring. So whenever the dark pillars would start to anchor, I could feel it in my belly. I would then do this with, I got some effect by myself, but it helped if I had certain people that I was with that would do it too, and then it would really clear this. It would clear basically the dark pillar. At the time, I didn't know that's what that was. um, away. And
Dark pillar. Hmm. So,
yeah, it was dark pillars. It's anchoring in people.
so this, and that's what she's described it as, also dark
Yeah,
pillars. So
that's what she said. I didn't know at the time what the hell it was. I just knew
I've
that
not
I would
heard that
start,
one.
my stomach would start hurting, and I could just feel I knew something was not right.
Yeah.
And so to get whatever rid of that, that's all I knew, is I was just getting rid of it,
Yeah.
energy. That's all I knew it was at the time.
And you guys were
Um,
under attack at that workshop, though. That's what
oh,
she was saying. Like it was off guard,
yeah.
off
Oh,
guard,
yeah, 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 yeah.
sitting
Um,
target type thing. Like let's gather here and then just zap them. Yeah.
anyway, that's a story in itself.
Yeah.
But I wanted to just say that, because, and then one little thing with that helped confirm for me, because I didn't really understand what was going on. I just was following my own inner guidance. Is one of those times, because we were on, I didn't even know, we were on really heavy attack at a particular time, and we were on the road, and we were two groups, and we were split up because we were so large, and we needed to get back as a whole group. And also, and even Aisha ate with us, and the way the alignment of the room was, it was very not conducive to holding frequency for us properly. And so Aisha was walking around, and she was just kind of walking around, just sort of doing little things with her hands and not really saying anything, just sort of walking around, la-di-da-di-da. And at some point in that, I was feeling like crappy do. So my stomach was hurting. So I said, okay, guys, we need to blah, blah, blah. And I just did my thing. And I think I would do some kind of breathing thing with it, and release, and just sort of, get, I don't know. I can't remember exactly for sure what I did at the time, but it was basically just, and
Just
she
a
walked,
clearing technique. You just clear
yeah,
it.
and she walked up to me, and she said, "What did you do?" And I said, "I don't know," because I had forgotten what I did, because it was so friggin' automatic, and it was just an intuitive thing. And she walked up and she goes, "Whatever it is that you did, the guardians wanted to tell you thank you, because you just really cleared the space." I think I barely cleared, not just the space around me, I cleared the whole damn room.
Right. Okay.
Took some stress off of her, and so we
Nice.
just kind of gave a little cheek hug, and I was like, "Thank you, you're welcome," It felt really good. And so I then went back, and I was like, "Oh, what the hell did I do?" So I started to really pay attention, and I started practicing it, and I could know throughout the trip, okay, something's up, we need to clear the space. I didn't find out till a while later that it was dark pillars that we were anchoring, but that was trying to get anchored. But whenever I think about it, I'd clear at least my space, and probably a pretty good area around me. Particularly the more people I had doing it with me, I think cleared a larger space. And so I was like, oh, okay. So I knew I had something in my particular lineage coding that I could clear a space of
And this was
disharmonic
your
energies.
second, third workshop, or when was Morocco? When did you go?
Let's see, Morocco, I had, at that point, I had actually moved from Illinois, and I was in the process of moving to New Mexico.
Okay. So you had been to like a couple workshops.
But I'd gone to, I went to the Rolling Michael Mary workshop in England in 2000, October 2004, I think that was.
Templars.
And I know I went to something before that, I think.
So
but I know yeah.
You're really in the group at this point, like really participating, doing grid work, your hands-on ground crew stuff, like foundation of this whole body of work here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I knew people that I could get information as to updates and different things about workshops that I couldn't go to, which were a lot of them. Yeah. And it's one of those ones that would get
that loop, people that share and stuff up to date.
Which, hey, when I could purchase things, I would purchase things. When I couldn't purchase things, I would get help, because it's about getting the information out, my opinion. But anyway, so I had, I guess, one of the things I felt when I had disengaged from my relationship with my husband was, and knowing and I was involved so much with the work, and I just knew, I think there was a little bit of running away as well, but I also had known I needed to make a change, shift. I knew where I was at. It wasn't. I just had antsy pants. I couldn't stay where I was at, and so I was like, okay, where do you want me to go? And so I had a map out, and I had my eyes closed, and I just sort of let my finger go and pick a spot, and it was a map of the United States, and it went down to Rama, New Mexico. I was like, the Four Corners area, and I was like, oh. Or first, I think I was sort of having a sense of the Four Corners area, and I had kind of a dream. I think it was a wake dream where, oh shoot, I'm going too fast because I still haven't finished the Illinois experience.
Okay, with the tree.
With the tree, particularly since it does tie to even more alien stuff. Okay. Personal to me.
Right.
Okay, so one of the times I was by the tree, and then I came back in, and I had this chair that I could sit in, that I had a window I could look directly out to the tree. So I'm relaxed, and I'm looking out and breathing, and it's kind of a nice little relaxed meditative space, and I look out and I look up, and there was a particular cloud formation over the tree area. And I had already kind of learned that many times you see certain type of cloud formations, 9 out of 10 times there's going to be some kind of spaceship in there. And it looked like one of those. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I just closed my eyes and tuned in, and I picked up that I found myself in a spaceship, and I was looking at me, but me different.
Found yourself in a spaceship.
When I closed my eyes and tuned in and connected with up
above
there.
You, like
above you, up in the clouds.
That's crazy.
I then sensed
I've had
that
stuff like that with clouds a lot too. That's really interesting.
Oh, it gets weirder. Okay, so
it always does.
I'm in this spaceship, and I look at the person who's there, and it's me. But it's not me. It looks like me, but it's a different version of me. And she goes, yes, I'm you, but I'm from the future. And her hair was kind of, she looked a little on the alien side. Her hair was kind of a certain way, and it was long, but it kind of reminded me, there's a picture in Voyagers when they have the pictures of the people. Let's see if I can find that page. Oh, it was in Voyagers 1.
And frizzy hair, like big frizzy hair waves.
Kind of like that, and it was
I could even put up a slide.
The RATHUNAEANA. Yeah, I think that's that. It was kind of reminded me of that look to a certain extent, but not quite those weird eyes, but kind of that same sort of feel with the head, dainty kind of head. And she was standing over a console, but she wasn't there wasn't a keyboard for her to do anything with, or a stick or anything. She just had her hands above the console, and through her hand, through connecting kinetically, I guess, she was controlling the ship that way. She didn't have to touch the console. She just ran her energy connecting in, I guess, kinetically.
Kinetic, yeah.
That's the word that just came to me. Yeah. And she could control the ship.
That's all my experiences too. There was no devices. It was all consciousness, just very organic. Even the ship, organic, just feeling. You said clouds, so that's like vapor type stuff. Right?
Yeah. And she said the reason. I said, "Oh, okay." Or no, what I said, "Okay, well, since we connected, why don't you tell me something about yourself?" And so that's when she said, "Okay, I'm your future self. I've come here specifically because I think at that time I had just been to the that workshop I told you about where I had the fourth ordination.
Phoenix, right?
Is it Phoenix? Yeah, because that was my first workshop, and it was intense, and I got a lot from it. But I just kind of afterwards, I wasn't really much much on the, even back then, I wasn't really much on the politics there of the
Okay.
people.
The
Some of
dramas
the, the drama, some of the
with
people.
the
There's
ET groups? The dramas with
just no,
or with the group?
just the mindset of some of the people. There was
Okay,
just sort of
gotcha.
a
At the group itself. At the
yeah.
website
It was
itself.
yeah. It did.
Yeah, I've heard a
There were
lot
some
of
really good people there, and then I don't know. There was just kind of an energy to just I wasn't
cliquish, like don't go over
cliquish.
there, don't talk to
Yeah,
this, you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So I was kind of thinking, I don't know. I'm really getting a lot. I know there's the technicals and all this is really, I get true
Mm-hmm.
on that. That's good information. But the group itself, I just,
And what did you feel?
Okay, hold
What?
on.
Okay, okay.
I'm still
I want to
telling the
go
story.
back to that though.
I had to give that preface because when she
Right,
was
right.
communicating, she says, I picked this time because I know you're thinking about getting out of this, about getting out of Helonic science. I wanted you to know it's important to stay in it because there's going to be certain activations that you're going to go through that are going to help me in the future.
You were to the
Because
point of tuning out of the group
I
altogether.
was getting kind of, I didn't really like some of the politics,
Mm.
and I was seriously considering not being involved with it anymore. And just a thought. I mean, I hadn't decided one way or the
It
other. I
didn't
just
match what the teachings were of what
right,
was how
right,
people were
right,
acting. Yeah,
exactly,
classic.
exactly.
Yeah,
Which I know is kind of a theme a lot of people have said.
yeah.
With a lot of the talks and stuff. But anyway, okay, so. But with knowing that, I'm still having this part of me, future self, saying, okay, I know the politics is a little, but the technical information is powerfully important. There's going to be activations that are going to occur that you need to go through that will help me deal with some things I'm going to be dealing with in the future.
Mm.
Okay, so this was, I don't know,
2003.
November or something, maybe of 2003, right? Because it was not that long, I don't think, after that workshop. So I was like, oh, okay. And then she showed me, because apparently, obviously, I found out more later that I deal with time. So
Right.
she could maneuver some things. And she showed me basically that she was heading towards, at that time, going to be heading towards, remember the Twin Towers movie, that series, oh shoot, the not elves, but
What was it
the
on?
the little short people, the gnome, not gnome, was it gnome? Not gnomes, not that short. Damn, Gondor and that series, Hobbit,
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the
Hobbit.
Rings.
Okay, gotcha.
The
Yeah.
Twin Tower one, I think it was, where it
Oh yeah,
showed
yeah,
two
yeah.
towers and that eye.
Solomon and all that. Yeah.
Okay, this happened before that I saw that movie,
Okay.
or I think maybe before that, but I don't even know
Okay.
if the movie had come out yet, because that was later. I think later than anyway.
Yeah,
I had
that's a
seen
different one.
yeah.
Solomon.
That eye thing.
Yeah, the big
That
eye.
thing was real. It was not made up because I saw that. She
Okay.
showed me that, and her ship was heading in that direction.
Whoa.
And she said, even though it's like the ship was like kind of getting dragged into it, she said, if you follow and continue doing what you're doing, I will be okay. I will be able to deal with whatever's going on.
Wow, you had that much insight. You could see.
And
that
I
much.
was like, oh, okay.
Huh.
And then I think a few other times I tuned back in with her, and she had shown me some more stuff with her console and what she could do with it, which was kind of wild. Some stuff that she could do interdimensionally with the different density levels of the body and
Wow.
clearing stuff.
Okay.
And yeah, there was one time where she was showing me something, and I physically could not move. I was just had in my mind, visualizing, and I couldn't, and I was just like stuck. And she was showing me stuff that she was doing. It was like,
Was there
oh
timing?
shit!
What was the timing of this? You'd be watching TV or out in public, or when did these things
Oh,
happen?
I would be in bed. I
Just
mean,
in
I
bed,
wouldn't
okay.
be. I wouldn't be any place that I'd get in trouble. I mean,
Good
it was. I would
good space.
intentionally. I was had the intention of connecting. I just one of those times
Okay.
was
Meditation type.
meditation time. So that was kind of cool. And
We haven't even gotten into Terra yet. This is fascinating. We're going to do like
oh yeah,
parts. I can see this is going to be ongoing.
I guess how long have we? I didn't know what time. What time did
No,
we start?
we can do parts. I'll split them up in
Yeah,
parts.
because I didn't want to do too long because people get can do
Yeah,
chunks of time and it's
that's the
better than
follow up thing too.
yeah.
So,
Um.
I do want to get into the book though at some
Okay.
point.
Do you
That's
I I I kind of just continually had experiences kind of like that. Like after Morocco, I had right before Morocco, I had moved. I had put all my stuff in my SUV and left it at a friend's house in Texas, in Houston. Took the plane trip from Houston over to Morocco, and and came back and then went to New Mexico, and that was very guided, specifically do this and be there at such and such time kind of thing. And just kind of really
same thing in New Mexico grids, like you're guided to places around
guided
the
to
four corners
places and
area.
stuff. The one thing that I do want to say about that I thought was interesting was I was running on a particular timeline going into it. When Morocco hit, that changed because the things that happened with Morocco changed the timeline. And we actually, because we had been doing certain timeline jumps,
Yeah.
right? And I could tell, I'd connect with certain people that before that really weren't getting the information, but were starting to actually finally get it. And were really kind of like shifting their whole way of being. And then when the Morocco thing hit, and because one of the things when I was in New Mexico, I was supposed to meet up with this group, and we were supposed to do certain things together, is what I got intuitively. When Morocco hit, that changed, and I knew I was, and I kind of felt like I sort of fell back in time feeling, was what I initially had gotten, and I had gone to then the following workshop in Phoenix in September. I think it was September, October of that year.
2003.
Of 2000, 2005.
Okay. Morocco was 2003? Is that what you
No,
said?
Morocco was 2005.
Okay. All right.
The other one I can't freaking remember the name of was 2003. It'll
Okay.
kill me. I have to. I can't believe I can't remember it. Beautiful. Was it in France or something like that?
Oh,
Anyway,
Dance Force series?
it was. I
Dance
think it
for
was the
Freedom?
dance. Yeah, it was one of those. I
That
think.
was Monsiago, I can't remember the name. Where he was doing the codes while she was talking. He was sitting there.
It was. No, it
Major
wasn't
part
that
of
one.
Flame Body, it seems like.
It wasn't that one. It was later.
Okay.
It was the one where the sphere of Amenti fell,
Mm,
and they had to rebuild it over the top.
I don't know. I keep wanting to say
I
Crystal
think
River Dance, but I think that
they
was
had.
Peru.
Yeah, that was Peru. Oh, that was an interesting one too. That was an interesting
You were at
workshop.
that one?
I wasn't at that one, but I have an interesting story that goes around with that time. I was in California actually during that time. Do you? I mean, I have all kinds of little stories, but
Yeah.
do you want me to do you want this to be predominantly the stories, and then maybe the next time we do
Yeah, I think so. I
the
think this is
book?
supposed to be the stories, and then we can go into the questions on the next time, and maybe even put them up in different order, like to have the foundation first of your story, and then your stories. Or
Okay, so I'll just finish then with the stories.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, let's do that.
so, okay, so then yeah, pretty much wrapped up Illinois, and we're into New Mexico, and I had been, kind of guided. I knew that after the Morocco workshop that I was going to need to take a break and regroup because that was such a stressful workshop. And so I luckily had a few days to recover, and then I was kind of like tuned in. It was like, okay, you need to make it. I didn't call ahead of time. I just got, okay, you need to be there. I had gotten the place to stay. I knew that much. I had AAA, so I had those books. So it's like, it was Marima, New Mexico. So I looked at what was in Marima, New Mexico, which was like really nothing but this one RV park with cabins. I was like, that's it. So I drove up there at a certain time and walked in, and I said I would like to have a cabin for a month. And the lady looked at me and she goes, nobody comes in and does that for a month. Like overnight, sometimes they will, but for a month? So she said, I don't know if I can do that, but give me a minute. I can get you into this one right now, and then I'll rejigger, and you may have to move into a different one, but we'll get you into one. And I was like, okay. And it was like she and I just clicked like right away. It was like family feeling, like we knew each other. And she wasn't always working there all the time. She was her and a partner. The partner and I still connected, and we're still friends, although I did have some disharmonic energy down the road. I needed to work out with her, but there was still this more of a stronger connection with this one lady. And so anyway, so then I got into the place and eventually settled in, and still kind of and just had this. The first night I was there in this place, it was like I could feel the ancestors there, because you're talking Indian territory, or not Indian, excuse me, American, Native American. Indian is not the right term. American Indian.
Anasazi's there?
Yeah.
No, there's Navajo, right?
It's Navajo, but
tribes.
actually, authentically, yes, it's the
Hopi.
not it's Hopi, not oh shoot, I'll remember it in a minute, but it's that, yeah, the Pueblo type people. It wasn't the Navajo. It was it'll come to me in a minute, the specific, but it was, yeah, more the Anahazi people. And what I realized as after I spent time there, is actually I had history in those grids myself.
And there's preserved history there. I mean, there's things.
Yes.
There's like remnants of ancient dwellings there, that are well
yeah.
preserved.
Oh yeah. I was in El Morro. It was actually, the name of the RV park was El Morro RV Park and Cabins. So like a mile away from our RV park was the El Morro Monument. And yes, very ancient site.
And is there like alignments to astronomy, like the stars and different ritual
That
sites?
was just a little bit farther down the road.
Okay.
But
So
yes,
I've seen a documentary on that. Like how would they?
Yeah.
They would have to have telescopes,
I
precision.
think that was actually in Arizona that they had that.
Yeah.
I think that was actually Arizona, but not far, because I was not that. I was not that far. Yeah, I was not that far from the Arizona border.
Okay.
I was basically pretty much in the Four Corners area.
Similar to the Mayan precision of time and the calendars and the stars, everything.
But yeah, definitely ancestors were like, we're really glad you're here. We know you're stressed and you made this big move, and you've been through a really hard time, but getting the workshop, but we're really glad you're here feeling. And Lon had one point had come to visit me there, and he was like, when he was there overnight, he was like, oh my God. I mean, it's like he could see the fully dressed, in feathers,
Oh, wow. So
Indian.
that is one of the questions, ancestral lineage. Like if you've identified that, what you've traced from your 3D lineage into your cosmic lineage, the connections. Because I know you're big on lineages. You've studied like the different cultures and races, everything, types.
When I've tuned into it, the strongest as far as the different tribes, I get Peru, Tribe 5 is the strongest that I get. And when you talk about the Americas, it's one big empire. So I have memory of, when she had the workshop, the last, I think it's the last Peru workshop in 2012 that she had there, where they talked about all that history. I was part of that, and I had memory of that and all that drama.
Did you attend that workshop either?
I didn't attend. It was too much for me
It
energetically.
felt like we were all there on some level.
Oh
'Cause,
yeah,
I mean,
we
there
were.
was a steady report,
Yeah.
updates, everything. It was
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
family filled.
Yes. Yes. It was pretty intense. Yes. Um, yeah, I had time there and remembered good things and not so good things, and yeah, and I had written some notes down. Oh, what I had picked up on of that was very much working with the elemental kingdom, and very much at that time how awake and aware and huge and evolved the elemental kingdom was, and not like they have become, but more what they originally were, and more how they were able to naturally create through their own choice.
The twistic
And
elemental kingdom, not distorted ones. Like
yeah,
organic
but
first
what the
creation.
organic, natural, running, fully evolved
First
element.
creation. So,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And
So with 3D lineage, what is your 3D lineage? Your connection and your mom and dad? Have you traced that?
oh,
far?
I get with that. I get.
I'm thinking
Okay.
Irish, but that's kind of stereotype. You have red hair.
Well,
like Scottish hair.
yeah. Okay. I got this a while back, and I'm just going to go with it because that's what I keep getting. A few different things, but biologically, I'm going to say the strongest is Boudica. Boudica?
Boudica, what is that?
Remember that story myth of Irish myth of Boudica? Boudica?
No, I don't. I'm not
Boudica?
familiar with it.
She was in it was in southern England, area of England, the Essenes, not Essenes, but something like that, tribe, where her husband got killed, and she ended up getting all the different tribes together and killing off most of the Roman legions all the way up to the capital in England, or whatever, though, in Britain. I can't believe you don't know that story. She had red hair.
No, I don't.
Anyway, I had gotten I think I was her.
Wow. Okay.
Because I had a
Major part of history for Ireland, right? It was like a rebellion.
England, for southern England.
For southern England, okay.
Because there was a period when I've forgotten about this, when I was looking at different things. I had gotten into the Celtic kind of Druidic type stuff. Still have kind of a little of a fascination to that. And I had this particular book, and I was going through it, and I was like, okay, am I in here? And I just kind of got yeah, and then I kind of can open it up to who I was, and I'd opened up to that, and then I read the story, and I was had a little bit of the story, and then I'm trying to remember if I had remembered something before I even read the story, or there's something when I read the story, I started to get memories that came through. And just really still kind of had felt a connection with her, and I had more memories that came after that, and a little bit more detail about what she was involved with, and then kind of not too long ago, I was like trying to find a little bit more, because I just always sort of felt like my lineage was tied to that lineage, and so I kind of read up on some information that they had, and I got more that I wasn't. Someplace I wrote those notes down. Do I have easy access to those notes?
But do you have any genealogy charts, like physical ones from your sides?
It doesn't go very far. I have some from England and some from Ireland, but I don't really happily, what did make me happy, have yeah.
I also want to talk about, we're talking about the lineages, and in the middle, the people are going to see the picture in the middle in between our cameras here. So do you want to explain what that is also?
Like I said, I just
That's your
guess
crest, you said, your
that's
family
what I
seal?
feel like is my family seal. I had
Cosmic
on
family
it
type
a
thing.
few years ago, and I had just kind of come to me when I was basically in 2013 when I had moved to Florida. I had kind of connected with my par- what feel is one of my key Tandriasia twins, and let's just I'm not going to say names. Just that was my Tangent twin, and we did a lot of time. We worked. It was uh, shoot Fort Myers area,
Is that when you
and
guys met at the workshop
we
also?
had we had met at a workshop,
Right, okay.
and anyway. We were connected to working together, and we had done some grid work and different things down in there, and kind of the more with that, I had started to pick up more memory because something about those grids and me. So kind of another place I really spent a lot of time in working. Besides New Mexico, New Mexico is another strong place. And the Caribbean, I have had memories of, because I have more memories of past lives than I really connect into the biology, except for as far as I say, I know there's a connection into the, I guess it was more Celtic roots or Celtic roots, kind of North Africa into southern England, that Celtic kind of roots. But I do feel like it wasn't the origins. My origins are still, I'm going to say, in Peru.
Okay.
And that's part of the Moorish Empire.
And where are you located at right now? Where
In
did you land?
in in Georgia,
You're in Georgia.
southeast Georgia, which
Okay.
actually has a story too.
Oh, I
There's
bet.
our
I bet.
spirits here too. And my mom, bless her, she doesn't know it at all, but she's part of the team. And all the places that she found, they have three. Her and my dad had purchased three different places in the area, and all of them are power spots.
Mm.
And that's because she, I know, was my daughter when I was Boudica,
Mm.
and there's just, and I remember another lifetime here in Georgia where I was dark skinned. Actually, really, probably majority of my lifetimes are darker skinned than lighter skinned, and I thought I had bits and pieces of this lifetime come to me at different times, and originally I had thought that I came from Africa because that's the story people are told, that originally everybody that was dark skinned came from Africa. Well, that's not true at all. Not even close. There has been some that have come over from Africa, but majority were already here from the Moorish Empire, and varying ranges of skin tone. But, because remember, we have tribes 1, 2, and 3 all in this general basic area, right? And those were the first tribes that were established.
In the Americas here?
Yeah,
In this continent?
because you have tribe 1 in the Antarctica, South Africa area,
Okay.
and then you have the ones that are in Peru, the 2 in Peru. You have the Caribbean. You have the Florida one. It's all this same area. Those are the root ones. And that's the root. Yeah. And the more of this research that I've done, or in my business partner, is the Caribbean is actually the heart, or the where we seeded out of, and then we spread out from there, as well as going through some of the other inner earth channels to maneuver. But basically we originated coming out of the Caribbean area.
And is there something to do with Lemuria and Alania
Lemuria's because remember,
from that point?
Lemuria is on the left,
It's not far
left side.
from there, right?
No,
Or
Lemuria's on the left, Atlantis is on the right
yeah.
of the central point of the Caribbean, and actually part of the Caribbean was part of Atlantis.
That's
right?
Right
So
where
they're
they
in Florida.
fell. Right. In that
Exactly.
area. So
All
it's like,
that.
how convenient
And
is
then
that?
a little
Yeah.
bit farther over, you've got Hawaii, not that far over,
That's the
and
remnants
it
of
was all of that.
the
Yeah,
islands.
all of that was all
The
one
white
big
sands of
empire.
Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah.
hmm
Yeah. Mm.
And that was a very protected area too, because the uh, the Anunnaki were more in the northeastern part of Atlantis into Europe and all that. All of that got compromised, but the majority of the Americas stayed pretty solid in the Christic teachings and way of being for a long time until they got invaded when Columbus supposedly came over to explore. It was actually a pre-invasion force of the Templar, which ended up the Templar. Though I have to say, I've learned a lot more about the Templar. That it's not quite black and white, literally black and white. It's they are part of the uh, healing of the planet with the animal Melchizedek, because remember the animal Melchizedek coming in the third seeding was to heal a lot of the draconian and Anunnaki problems that they had.
The Bioregenesis Project.
Bioregenesis. So the animal Melchizedek / Templar group were given were put in the position of being lawmakers, or giving the structure of the rules of how to play on the planet. And I think they kind of sometimes took it a little too far, but because they had still their compromise, the ones that were not running the full Melchizedek, right, just the coming in and influencing things and having certain things happen, because everybody's trying to work together and have it be working out. But anyway, there was things that the man in Melchizedek, so obviously we know from Voyagers, and as well as more later material, that they ended up doing things that wasn't really, that we know of as good, because they were trying to work with the Anunnakis.
The treaties being broken.
Yeah, and stuff like that. They did some stupid shit. But I think it was trying to be good, trying to respect free will, and trying to work things out, but it didn't quite work out right. Yeah. And I think, and then part of that was because of the fact that they had were siding with the Anunnaki in certain things, and were kind of running certain frequencies that weren't real effective. They were involved with some nasty stuff that happened. I mean, there was a lot of taking certain people slaves, and just certain real major control things that were going on with the Templars. They had some energetic karma that they had to work out, and kind of opened their template up to having the invasion eventually coming into the Americas. But yeah, because when I tune in to what I remember, kind of going to that lifetime that I said about connecting with my mom in Georgia here, back in, I get around the Civil War time, plantation time, it's funny, it's actually on these grids here that I'm living at right now. Literally where I'm at right now here in Georgia. But I had thought, one of the few years back, I had remembered that I had been dark-skinned in what was a tropical climate, and I had been taken. I had this feeling of being taken. Well, what I realize now is it was actually, I was taken from the Caribbean area and brought up north. And I remembered that I think I had gotten away or something. Anyway, I know that I was part of my family, or some kind of connection I have with these grids and with my mom, except she was lighter skinned for whatever reason in that lifetime. But knew that I was supposed to look after her. I had this sense of looking after her, and kind of still had that sense in this lifetime of looking after her. But when I realized, okay, it's the same lifetime. I'm not remembering two different lifetimes. It's the same lifetime. So there was a time period when I was in the tropical area, which was actually in the Caribbean, and remembering that the things that we could do then, that we could, well, maybe it wasn't the same lifetime. I think I must have lived a long time, or there was a relationship, I know. But I remember when I tune in to being there that we could lift, we could elevate things and create with intention really easily what we wanted.
More things
And
turned on in the DNA.
yeah, way more things turned on.
Levitation stuff.
Levitation and just, yeah, just just living by the law of one, of all being interconnected and all one, yet individual, and the mechanics of how things work with that. Yeah, all that was well known in the Americas back in the day, and yeah, and then being involved with the change and with the being invaded and the control that ended up coming over here and kind of taking down the empire, so to speak. Although actually the empire is still technically actually alive because the Constitution we have is from the Moorish Empire. Because the Constitution actually follows natural law to a certain extent of the energies of mechanics of how things work.
So I do want to go into this, like the timeline of Terra, and
Okay.
from when Terra fell, the Bridgestone project failed, all of these things, and if you can give a timeline of events with your own 3D experience during those times to show the interaction between the lifetime maybe experienced on Terra.
Well, actually, I think I kind of already, in a sense, I kind of already did, because when you talk about the Morocco workshop,
was that
remember, that was actually the workshop when Terra fell.
Was it? Okay.
Yes, it was.
Makes sense.
Because we were lining up in our realm, they were lining up in Terra, and I think that was when Terra fell. And then
it was invaded.
And then Gaia was lining up. Everybody was in their own time zone realities. Were lining up because the stellar spirals were trying to come down, right? And they had to come to the densities. And that was when the Budhara, right? Mm-hmm. That came in, and they attacked. I think they attacked Gaia actually, but Gaia fell. I think it was. And then that affected somehow with Terra. We hadn't been affected yet.
Gaia
and she
is
said
above
that was
Terra, and then Earth is after Terra.
Right. Okay. Gaia is would
density
be Harmonic
7, 8, 9.
Yeah. So 7, 8, 9.
Density 3.
Our oversoul level.
Yeah.
Gaia, our oversoul level. Yeah. So our oversoul level got compromised. Terra then in turn was being compromised. We hadn't been compromised yet, she said, because of the way time lags or moves. Okay. So she had said at that workshop that our oversoul level and soul level were basically coming into our incarnate level because they didn't really have anywhere else to go.
Yeah,
because
right.
That part of us hadn't fallen
Incoming.
Yet. And it was really, let me tell you, weird.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. And
do you have memories of the lifetimes there, Gaia, Terra, anything? Is there connection with the book?
I know that Lon and I were connected into Gaia. I think in the oversoul level. Oh, maybe it was the soul level. I knew there was a connection. I think the oversoul level. I never really felt personally. This is weird because I know I wrote the book about it, but I've never really felt a connection to the Melchizedek lineage myself.
Okay.
I've always felt like I was adopted by the Melchizedeks, that I was from completely somewhere else. So the more we've gotten into like the Adonais, I felt more connected to that. I'm probably more the Anu Elohim before they fell energy. That kind of leads back even farther. More the Ra type energy is more my lineage. And like, Alhambra, I love to pieces. I feel resonate hugely with them. But coming into this realm, I think all the times that I've connected in, I I I didn't really want to say this, but I've told a few people I have a connection with Akhenaten. But I think when I connected with him, it wasn't from a 3D level. It was because he was an avatar level. It was one of the higher levels up. I connected in through that and was involved with him through that because I know Yesha talked about there being 3 people that he ended up coming back as because his soul had his consciousness had fragmented into 3 people. And what's interesting with that, and I guess I'm getting off of Terra again. Like I like you've.
Yeah, I'm trying to bring it to the connection to the book here.
I know. I keep going off the book. To me, I did have one time that I did connect with what I felt was a future part of me connecting into Terra, and I think that's more. We kind of talked a little bit, I think, about our memory of Terra is actually more future than past. I have more future memory because Terra is basically represents a particular future of us, of whatever timeline we're on. There's a timeline that runs with Terra because it's really the same entity. It's
it's still going. Like it's
well, Earth is a piece of Earth is its own planet plus it's a piece of Terra.
Yeah.
As well as Mars and
system.
Jupiter and Uranus are all pieces of Terra. Mm-hmm. And they all have their history, which we never discussed because Yesha was, when I don't blame her, she's like, you guys we have enough information with here, much less try to get their history too. Yeah. But they are all focused. Pieces of Terra. So, which is interesting because there's a lot of there's got to be a lot of hidden history with that, especially with Mars when Mars is ancient and Saturn, and Mars is in Venus. I mean, they all have their pieces that fit the whole puzzle.
But Earth is a hub, so
it's a significant yes. That's it's a significant yeah. But yes, I've always. So yeah, I feel more connected into the future because I can't remember. She said it's like a year or 2 years in the future because it runs just a little bit faster because it's Harmonic Universe 2. So it runs just a little bit faster in the future. It's also been, she's kind of equated it with the particle universe.
The angles,
yeah.
Everything.
So there is a time reality probability where yes, Terra fell, and there's a part of me that's connected into that. And I remembered, during that time when she was talking about things that happening, that I tuned in, and I kind of got this feeling we're going to be okay, and that there was sort of a shifting out of it. I think she did pass, but she didn't fragment. Her consciousness didn't fragment. She somehow, when she did pass, she connected into another. There's not words. It's just a feeling of connecting in slightly into a different probability energetically. Of the consciousness of being, because it's not rock bottom solid by any means at all. A reality. So, but definitely.
When did the memories start coming in, or how did the book start? Like when did?
Okay, I can talk about that. That's easy to talk about. Okay. Oh, and it'll take us back to New Mexico.
Okay.
That's good.
It all connects.
It all connects.
We're going there anyway.
We're going into there. So I'm in New Mexico, and I was wanting to do the work. I was wanting to do something with Keylonic Science and Cathara, but I just wasn't quite feeling it outright. I was doing fine with the grid work, but the teaching part of it, I couldn't find an angle that I liked that worked. And I was hanging out with this one late person that was working at the cafe and living there on the place, and she was transsexual, so it was physically male but very female in her domineer. So I'd always want to call her a she, even though physically it was a he.
Running more manly.
Black unicorn was the name that that she had at the time. Anyway, the two of us one evening there was a place across the street that was kind of an artsy artist showed their work, and there was plays done, and it's just kind of a very creative place. It used to be, I think, the school years ago when they had a school in there. And one weekend they had this lady, this lady come, and she was doing myths, telling stories. She was a storyteller of, I think it was Norish. It'll come out of my mouth. Norish. Shoot.
Nordic?
Nordic,
Nordic,
yeah,
okay.
type storytelling stories. And it was really good. She was really getting into it. It was really cool, and we had a good time. And we came back, and Black Unicorn looked at me, and she goes, "You know, that KS stuff is really kind of hard to understand. It's very technical. People have a hard time, too, when you come at them straight, face first, into something. But if you come in the back door and tell them a story, they'll pick up the information a lot easier. So why don't you write a book about Keylonic science in story form?" Or actually, first she said you could do play. You could be an orate or orally do it, and I tell stories. I said, no, I'm never going to do that. I'm not going to do that. But I could write a story. So in El Moro, New Mexico, which from what I found being there is that there was a lot of people that came to this particular place to do a lot of healing work and writing, and there was just something about those grids. And so the story just started there and evolved there. I would, sit in my chair outside. Was staying in an RV. I eventually got in an RV, and I had a little place I would sit, and I'd sit at my computer, and the story just started to awaken, and became kind of like Kara was just her own person, came in, took on a life of its own. My business partner says that it's me, Kara's me, and I think there's some qualities of me in her, but I still think she's her. But I think my growth got expressed in her to a certain extent. I mean, it's a combination of my personal growth in this time space reality, but then again, you look at it's all simultaneous too. But
you don't feel that you were tapping into an actual lifetime there?
I feel like I was tapping into a real life. Okay. I felt like all the characters were alive. But see, what's interesting is that it's all simultaneous too. So it's almost like what you were saying earlier, timelines merging. Yeah. That's probably blending. That I think that's really what was probably going on.
Okay.
It's timeline merging.
What year was this when you started in New Mexico?
2006 was when I started the book, somewhere in 2006.
Okay. So this was after everything.
Yeah, that was after Morocco, and I'd settled in, and I think I'd gone to the Phoenix workshop in September of 2005, and I went to the Mount Shasta workshop, and I think some others.
Grid Keepers one, wasn't it? Mount Shasta.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the Denver. I went to the first Denver sexuality one. I then went to the second one after it was over and got feedback, and then I went to the one in the Virginia Beach. Actually made it to that one.
It feels like Sliders was merging from Cathar into that.
And I went to I went through one of the 12 tribe ones, the one that was March of 2008. And I think that was the last. That was, I think, the last physical. No, that wasn't the last physical workshop I went to. I went to the May 2012 one, and then a couple of ones after that. Yeah. So yeah, I was still very strong in the work, and and doing grid work there in New Mexico. So it was just kind of as I evolved the character, and as the character evolved, and I would have periods where I just would not write at all.
Okay.
And then
I was
I
going
would
to
be
say, how long did it take you to finish that?
actually forever.
Yeah.
I got done probably 2013, maybe
Oh,
2014.
wow. Like 6 years. So.
Yeah, because I would have periods where I literally forgot I was writing a book, and then for some odd reason I remember that I had this book. So I'd go back to the book and I'd
Like a
write the
time stream or something. Hop on, hop
yeah,
off. Like, there it is.
and then I'd write for a bit, and then I would just kind of the energy would just sort of fade, and the flow would end, and I would go okay, and then I'd go do something other things for a while, and then the stream would come back up again. Thankfully, the second book is not going that. I'm going faster with the second
The
book.
second book. Okay.
I am trying getting the end together, but I still have periods where I go for a little bit not writing, and then I'll go write again.
Is this like a continuation then? Still on Terra after, well, it ends,
Well,
I guess.
actually, this book starts the fall of 2012.
Okay.
It starts there, and so it's here. It's in, Earth on Earth now,
Okay.
and it actually starts in New York City. It starts in New York City, and um,
Does it merge some of the things from the previous book, the characters or anything?
oh, yes, a little bit.
Okay.
Because Kara is now Candace,
Okay.
and I mean, so pretty
Incarnated.
much basically pretty much the main characters are back, but they
From
would be
Terra.
back,
Fresh from.
but they would be what they would be like now. So yeah, um, and Rochelle is connected in, and which Rochelle is kind of an interesting character because this being has no sex. So it's not easy to write, and it's actually a huge collective. It actually is from the Rochelle realm because
Androge.
it's Androge, and it's when we were getting the Rochelle material on our Rochelles. Do you remember that? You
Or
can
was
look
that
at that
Sacred
material.
Sex? Rochelle was before. Might have
I
been
think it was
before.
4. I think
Cathara
it
4,
came in.
I want to say.
Yeah, Cathar 4 and I think it was 2004 that
Okay.
information was coming in with the there was those codes where you ascension code thing where you traveled up through things. Those
Oh,
codes.
the Eartha passages.
And
Remember
then
that?
and then it had no
No, that was way after.
remember there's no place like home. Remember that code?
Oh man, that's Takion.
Tachyon? That's kind of part of it. The
Rosetta.
Rochelle is
Rosetta code.
I think the Rosetta code's part of it too.
Okay.
And the Rochelle level is, I think it's before the Mashayahana. It's like right before the Mashayahana. Is like, yeah,
Okay.
right before the Mashayahana. It's kind of between the Rishi level. We have all the different Rishi levels, and then you have the Rochelle, Rochellam. I mean, there's different variations of it, and that I got inspired for my Rochelle character, who then Rochelle nicknamed Rasha, and his involvement with Terra, and actually its involvement, not a he or a she. And when it's an orb, huge orb shaped being that can form itself into a physical form, but it's really an orb being. And when you hear it speak, its many voices harmonized into one voice. And how this being connected with the guardians that were involved with Terra, that group, and how they had in the beginning of the book they have a meeting where they're discussing what to do because of what's happening on Terra. Should they intervene or not intervene? And then they create this plan, long-term plan, that starts out on dealing with Terra and with that Amenti mission. Of course, I call it the Mente as opposed to Amenti mission.
I noticed the subtlety, the subtle changes
Yeah,
there.
yeah. My partner says I got it more correct saying Mente than Amenti, but whatever.
Oh,
Um, and and that actually really it's a series. So it starts out with dealing with that, but then that's going to lead into where we're at now, currently, with the failsafe mission. But really, the failsafe mission started a lot earlier than now, and where we're at here in 2012, it was way before that.
yeah.
And also when they did their meeting, I don't go into it in detail, but I kind of referenced that many different beings from different time frames come together.
Getting into the Nomi gene stuff, it
Yeah,
sounds like.
yeah. And of course, I don't think I knew about that. I didn't know about the Nomi gene at that
Yeah.
time. But anyway,
I
that
know.
was earlier than that. But yeah, had all gotten together to work it out, of how to keep everybody staying conscious of who they are and the memory of it, and have them be able to cycle and instead of fragment the
So these
conscious.
buildings, Tara, that really stood out to me. The first thing that stood out was the cover of your book and this little side part. It's really subtle.
Yeah, and actually, your cover is an old version that I had that I never could make work for public production. So I have a
Okay.
completely different cover that I had for when I published the
I'd like
book.
to see the new one then. Yeah.
Well, actually, the new one the new one has the artwork that I did, but
Okay.
the other one before that. If you pull up my website and you see the picture on the front
Yeah.
that I have
Yeah.
in the corner, left-hand corner, is a picture. I don't think I've changed that yet. It has the old cover on it.
Yeah, because I was trying to figure out, is that a tree or is that, how sometimes when the photocopy does something,
Yeah,
it
no.
changes it.
Yeah,
And I had to ask you, like, what is that? Because
Yeah.
it automatically, I felt an encryption in that. That couldn't be, but
There
it
is.
started
I
bringing
felt
back
it
the
too
screen.
when I wrote it, because there's very little because I had found this beautiful picture, and so I kind of added the orb, the sphere, a Menti sphere, and then for some reason I just drew that thing and knew it represented. I just knew that's Alania. That represents the city of Alania.
Okay.
I knew it. And then when I did the updated one, well, the picture that is in the slide, and it's the current cover, I have the spaceship, and then I was like, you need to have that in there again. So I did it again.
Tapping into maybe a real city on Terra.
It is
thing.
because the story starts where it's the ceremony of the new king of Alania, and so Kara and her father are traveling. They do their morning ceremony, and then of rejuvenation, and then they traveled in their vehicle that flew, little thing that flies in the air, and when they go through the city, when I look at the city, it's like a dead zone. It's these empty buildings and you could tell at one time the buildings were really alive, but now they're just dead. There's just this dead energy, and there's like, when you go to some of the more modern cities today where you just have a lot of places that are like blighted areas.
Yeah.
It's a very blighted area. And it was such a contrast because when you go to the Piccolo community city in Guam, New Guam, it's like so different. It's so alive. Everything's alive and colorful and buoyant because that area of the planet's still fully embodied. The elementals were a more fully alive, more awake, aware, conscious, creative in their own right beings. because really everything is elementals, right?
Right.
It's really, we're all made up of elementals.
What were the
Conscious. So
buildings made out of? Like, what were they like?
you're talking in Alania?
Yeah, in Alenia.
Um, I think I said like a stone concrete type crystal material.
There was like different floors, like they were huge buildings, like
Uh
where,
huh. Uh huh.
like in.
Huge, big, big, big buildings. Yeah.
Mhm. Was it like commerce, or what was going on in the cities? What was happening? What was the life
What
like?
what I got is on in Alania. They were doing commerce. They were using money.
Okay.
When you got out of there, because by that point Eleni was shutting down so much energetically that they couldn't create, the people couldn't easily, some still could, but it was difficult for people to generate their own needs and get their own needs met. There were still certain people, especially in the higher families, where they were doing still able to, I don't know why I got guidance on this. They were doing these rejuvenation ceremonies. That's what I got, was that in the morning, once in the morning and once in the evening, the community would, well, in Guam it was the community, but with Kara in her household, it was just basically her and her dad, because her mom had died when she was born, and her mom was from um, I didn't call it. Did I call it Mu? I forgot what I called it.
I think
The
you did.
continent.
It was
Did I
Mu.
leave it as Mu? Okay. Mu and New Guam is a territory in that, and then Piccolo was another part of the empire. It was an empire within that. Um, so she was from there, and her dad was from Alania. So she had the two lineages together. And I'd always kind of felt that she had bird energy to her, and then I kind of got more detail into what her physical stuff looking was, as she's kind of more, which would be probably more connecting to my lineage of the raw connection, the bird,
Avian.
avian,
Blue
blue
avian.
avian
Corrugate stuff.
connection. Yeah, yeah.
We won't go there.
We don't need to go there. That might be another discussion.
So the rejuvenation thing, is that like
That
reestablishing their connection to source through Terra, like through the sphere, the actual connection, and
well, there wasn't a sphere yet. It was
yeah.
connecting
But
it to
the core, I guess.
planet. They would connect. Well, I was calling it planet. Learned it's not a planet, but anyway, connected into the planet of So yeah, it would be
Terra's a
basically
hub
you're
also.
doing. Basically, you would be doing a Maharic shield, but I didn't call it that because I didn't want to mess with
Right.
all that crap. But anyway, so I just called it a rejuvenating ceremony, and that's where they would get recharged or fed, because they didn't eat. But there was people in the cities that were degrading so much that they were actually having to start eating other life forms in the city. But naturally, that's not what was supposed to happen, or naturally what was occurring.
Did you go into the actual fall? And I haven't made it all the way through it yet. We started moving right when I started reading. But did you like the invasion or anything like that? Or do you even have memories?
I didn't get necessarily into the invasion part per se, although I sort of kind of referenced it a little bit. But it was more just the fact that the planet itself was having severe earthquakes, and which was shaking really bad. Like I said, the quantum of the energy was lowering and lowering to where people were not were having to eat to sustain, because it was more of a energetic thing that was going on. So there was the light, the buildings were becoming dead, the people were becoming more dead, dying earlier. They weren't able to sustain just by running the natural frequencies, because particularly in Alania, the grids were locking up so bad that it just couldn't run it, because they were doing the stuff they were doing with the crystal generator, because they were abusing their power. I did get into that with it. Um,
Yeah.
and that was making them vulnerable to outside things as well, coming in within, being attacked. But it was more just the decay of the energetic planet itself was more of my focus. I just was tuned into that part.
Well, let's
Yeah.
jump right into the May 2012 events and the split.
Mhm.
And I wanted to go into your experiences of the new plasma teachings and the contrast of that, since you were a big part of the foundation. You did Flame Body right when everything was going on. This would be really interesting to...
Could we just take like a
Oh.
5-minute break?
Yeah, sure.
And then I'll answer that question.